After 19 long years of carrying a marriage on her shoulders, the silence in the living room broke with a whisper that shook everything. Yandy Smith sat slouched against the couch cushions, her frame smaller somehow, as though she had been shrinking for years under the weight of unspoken pain. Her eyes were heavy, her lips trembling, her chest rising with shallow breaths that carried the burden of nearly 2 decades. Across from her sat Keisha, her cousin, who had always seen her as indestructible. But tonight, the woman in front of her wasn't a warrior, wasn't a public figure, wasn't the polished professional who kept her image spotless on television. Tonight, she was simply Yandy, a tired woman confessing to the only person she trusted that she could no longer hold it together. "I don't want to live like this anymore," she said softly. "I don't want the chaos. I don't want the back and forth. I just want peace." The weight of the words made the room colder. For years, Keisha had admired her cousin's strength. She had watched her endure storms that would have crushed most people. She remembered the years of Mendeecees Harris's incarceration, the lonely nights, the endless phone calls, the trips to visit him, and how her cousin still smiled for the children so they wouldn't feel the absence as deeply. She remembered the nights when tabloids filled with whispers of other women, the shame that would have broken another wife, and how Yandy Smith walked into public spaces with her head held high as if humiliation had no power over her. She had seen her cousin hustle to pay bills, manage businesses, protect her family, and shield her husband's name all at once. But what she had never seen until now was Yandy shaking, her voice cracking. Admitting that her fight was almost gone. "I've been keeping this marriage alive by myself," Yandy Smith confessed. Her tears rolling but her tone sharpened by years of suppressed frustration. "If he wants me, if he wants this marriage, then now it's his turn. It's time for Mendeecees Harris to fight for me." Her cousin frowned, searching for what could have pushed her cousin this far. And then Yandy told her. It wasn't some dramatic scandal splashed across social media. It wasn't a betrayal in the headlines. It was something small, something so ordinary it almost sounded absurd. But in that simplicity lived the proof of how deeply she had been neglected. "We were sitting at dinner with his mother, Miss Judy," she said, her head shaking. "It was nothing out of the ordinary. And I reached over and took a sip from his glass. Just one sip of water. And he looked at me with disgust. He said, 'Why are you drinking my water?' And in that moment, it broke me. Because after everything I've given, everything I've carried, that's what he chooses to confront me about? A sip of water?" Keisha opened her mouth to respond but closed it again. She realized immediately this wasn't about the drink. Yandy Smith's voice trembled with rage as she explained. "It wasn't about the water. It was about what it represented. He can take from me without hesitation, my money, my meals, my time, my loyalty. But the second I reach for something of his, suddenly I've overstepped. That wasn't about thirst, that was about respect. That was about being seen as equal. And after 19 years, I still don't feel that from him." Her body shook as she pressed her hands into her lap, her nails digging into her palms. "Do you know what it feels like to never know what version of your husband will walk through the door? One day he's joking and laughing, the next he's cold and silent, the next he's angry at something you can't even name. And you're just expected to adapt, to keep the peace, to survive it. That's not marriage. That's not love. That's survival. And Keisha, I'm tired of surviving. I want to live." Her cousin's instinct was to soften the edges, to find the silver lining. "Maybe this is just his way of showing love," Keisha offered gently. "Maybe he doesn't know how to express it the way you need." But the sharpness in Yandy's response stopped her mid-thought. Her tears streamed but her voice rang with a chilling steadiness. "I've told myself that for 19 years. I excused his distance when prison walls stood between us. I excused the rumors about other women, convincing myself they weren't true. I excused his silence when my heart was starving for words. I excused his moods when my soul was begging for stability. But excuses don't fix anything. Excuses don't heal. Excuses only leave scars. And I can't keep lying to myself that this is love." She leaned forward now, her eyes blazing through the tears. "I've been holding my breath for 19 years, waiting for Mendeecees Harris to finally give me even a fraction of what I've given him. And every day it feels more and more like that day isn't coming. And if it hasn't come by now, maybe it never will." The silence was unbearable, and Keisha finally asked the question that had been clawing at her chest. "So, are you ready to walk away?" Yandy Smith's lips trembled, her face streaked with tears, but her voice carried the calm of someone who had already asked herself that question too many times. "I don't want to, but I can't fight anymore. If he doesn't fight for us now, then maybe there is no us left." The words were like a knife. Keisha reached for her cousin's hand instinctively, but Yandy pulled back, not harshly, but firmly, so that her truth would not be softened by touch. "I gave him everything," she said, her voice rising. "I defended him when people mocked me. I carried his children, raised them like a soldier, made sure they never felt abandoned. I paid the bills when the money ran dry. I wore the mask of strength even when it was breaking me inside. And when I finally needed someone to hold me, I was left alone. That's not partnership. That's punishment. Her tears came faster now, but her gaze was steady, unflinching. If choosing myself makes me the villain, then I'll take that title. I'd rather be hated for protecting my peace than destroyed for holding on to pain. Keisha's own tears spilled as she whispered. But you've always been the strong one, Yandy. It's hard to even hear this coming from you. Her cousin gave a tired laugh through her tears. A sound that carried both sadness and defiance. That's the curse, Keisha. I've been strong for so long that people forgot I was human. Strength has cost me my peace, my joy, my ability to rest. And when I finally needed someone to be strong for me, no one showed up. Not even him. Her voice lowered, but each word struck like a hammer. Sometimes I look at him and wonder, who is this man I sacrificed everything for? Why can't he give me even a fraction of what I've poured into him? I thought love would be enough, but love without peace, without respect, without care, that's not love. That's a slow death. And I'm done dying quietly. Keisha leaned closer, her chest heavy, and asked, so what happens now? The answer was sharp and immediate. Yandy Smith wiped at her face, her tone firm as stone. Now it's his turn. If Mendeecees Harris wants me, if he wants this marriage, if he wants this family, he has to prove it. Because I can't fight anymore. I've given everything I had. And I refuse to keep bleeding for someone who won't even bandage my wounds. The room fell into a silence so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. For the first time, Yandy Smith wasn't begging, wasn't bargaining, wasn't hoping for change. She was drawing a line. And whether Mendeecees Harris would step over it, or let her walk away, was no longer her responsibility. The quiet in the room stretched on, heavy and sharp, until it almost became unbearable. Keisha sat with her hands twisted together in her lap, afraid to speak, afraid that even one wrong word would shatter her cousin completely. For years she had known Yandy Smith as the fighter, the provider, the one who never cracked no matter how cruel life became. But tonight she was looking at a woman who had carried the weight of 19 years on her own shoulders and was finally admitting that she was too tired to carry it anymore. I've spent 19 years giving and giving, Yandy Smith whispered, her voice hoarse, her chest rising heavily with each breath. I defended him when the world called him names. I put my dreams aside so that his wouldn't collapse. I stayed loyal through prison walls, through rumors, through financial stress. I kept telling myself love was enough, that if I held on, one day it would all balance out. But what do I have now? A marriage that feels like a job, a heart that feels empty, and nights where I wonder if he even sees me at all. She pressed her palms together so tightly her knuckles went white. Do you know what that does to a woman, Keisha? To pour yourself into a man until there's nothing left, only to realize he hasn't poured into you in years? It makes you question your worth. It makes you question if the problem is you. And for so long, I believed it was me. I believed maybe I wasn't enough, maybe I wasn't lovable the way I thought. But no, what I've given has been more than enough. It's him who hasn't chosen to show up. Keisha blinked through her tears, trying to steady her voice. But cousin, don't you think maybe he does care in his own way? Maybe he just doesn't know how to show it right. The moment those words left her mouth, Yandy Smith's eyes hardened through the tears. That's the story I've told myself for almost 2 decades. I excused him when he was gone, told myself he was trying. I excused the silence when I needed words, convinced myself that love doesn't always have to be spoken. I excused the anger, the mood swings, the inconsistency, because I wanted to believe loyalty meant patience. But do you know what all that excusing did, Keisha? It left me alone. It left me holding this marriage together with one hand while holding myself together with the other. And now I don't have hands left to hold anything. Her voice broke as she continued, but she didn't stop. Do you know how many nights I stayed awake, wondering how to keep the lights on, wondering how to keep the kids smiling while my own heart was breaking? Do you know how many times I cried into a pillow so no one else would hear me? Do you know how often I told myself, just hold on, he'll see you one day, he'll fight for you one day? And now here I am, 19 years later, still waiting for that day. Keisha, how long does a woman have to wait before she disappears completely? The question sliced into the air, and her cousin couldn't answer. All she could do was cry quietly, her chest heavy. As Yandy spoke truths that had clearly been bottled for far too long, I've sacrificed so much of myself, Yandy Smith went on. Her voice steadier now, sharpened by anger that had finally found its voice. I stopped asking for little things, flowers, kind words, affection, because I told myself those things didn't matter as long as he was here. I stopped asking for help with bills, with the house, with the weight of it all, because I told myself that's what strong women do. But what about me? Who was supposed to carry me? Who was supposed to show up for me when I couldn't carry it anymore? Her cousin's lip trembled as she whispered, so what happens if he doesn't change? If he doesn't finally fight for you? The answer came sharp and immediate. Yandy Smith sat taller, her tears still running but her voice steady as steel. Then I walk away. Because I refuse to keep setting myself on fire just to keep him warm. I refuse to sacrifice my soul for a man who won't even bend his pride for me. I refuse to bleed myself dry so that he can live comfortably while I wither away. If he can't fight for me now, then there is no us left to save. The words echoed like thunder in the stillness. For so long, outsiders had pointed to Yandy Smith and Mendeecees Harris as proof that loyalty could endure anything. Their names had become synonymous with survival. But now, hearing her cousin say those words with such calm conviction, Keisha realized that survival isn't the same as love. Survival is enduring. Love is healing. And the woman across from her had been surviving far too long. I'm tired of being the strong one, Yandy Smith continued, her hands trembling. Everyone praises me for being unbreakable, but they don't understand the cost of that strength. It cost me my peace. It cost me my rest. It cost me the joy of simply being a woman who wanted to be loved and cared for. And the cruelest part is that when I finally needed someone to be strong for me, no one came. Not even him. Her tears blurred her vision, but her words carried a clarity that could not be ignored. If he can't see me now, at my breaking point, then maybe he never will. He's had 19 years to realize my worth. If he doesn't see it now, when I'm this broken, then what hope is there left? Keisha sobbed quietly, her voice cracking. I don't want to see you walk away. You've always been my example, the one who showed me what loyalty meant. A tired smile curved across Yandy Smith's lips, but it carried no joy. Then maybe I've been teaching you the wrong lesson, cousin. Because loyalty without peace isn't love, it's punishment. And strength isn't always about holding on. Sometimes strength is knowing when to finally let go. The words landed like a final verdict. Keisha realized her cousin wasn't just venting. She was transforming. This wasn't a threat, it wasn't bargaining, it was a declaration. Yandy Smith leaned back, her face streaked with tears but her voice frighteningly calm. If Mendeecees Harris wants me, if he wants this family, if he wants this marriage, then he knows what he has to do. Because I won't keep destroying myself for love that doesn't heal me. I want peace, I want joy, and if he can't give that to me, then I'll give it to myself. The room fell into a silence so thick it felt like the air itself was listening. Keisha reached for her cousin's hand, and this time Yandy Smith let her hold it. Their fingers intertwined, and for a moment, both women sat together in shared grief, in the suffocating truth of what had been spoken, and as the night lingered on, only one question echoed louder than either of their sobs. Would Mendeecees Harris finally rise to fight for the woman who had fought for him for nearly 20 years? Or had the fight already ended without him even realizing it? The night had grown so still that even the walls seemed to be listening. Hours had passed, yet neither woman moved from the couch. The air was thick with confession, heavy with truths that had been buried for far too long. Keisha sat silently, her fingers knotted together, watching her cousin unravel piece by piece and then gather herself back together in a way that was unfamiliar but undeniable. She had never seen Yandy Smith like this before. To the world, to the family, to the cameras, Yandy had always been the definition of strength, composed, polished, unbreakable. But tonight she was stripped bare. Her voice hoarse, her face swollen from crying. Her soul finally demanding to be heard. I carried him for 19 years, Yandy Smith whispered. Her tone steadier now but sharper than before. Longer than I ever carried myself. I defended him when no one else would. I kept his name alive when prison tried to erase him. I raised our kids as if I could make them forget that their father wasn't there. I held the house together while rumors ripped through my spirit. And what did I get in return? Silence. Distance. The kind of love that only works when I'm giving, but never when I'm in need. Her voice cracked, but she pressed forward. I don't know if people understand what it means to feel invisible in your own marriage. To sit in the same room with the person you love and still feel like a stranger. To hold them down in public, defend them against everyone, and then go home and cry alone in the dark because they don't see you. That's been my life, Keisha. And I can't keep living it. Her cousin's eyes brimmed with tears, but she forced herself to ask the question anyway. So you're really ready to walk away? The answer came with a calmness that frightened her. Yandy Smith lifted her head, her eyes red but burning with clarity. If I have to. Because I can't keep teaching my children that love means suffering. I won't let them grow up thinking a woman's job is to sacrifice until there's nothing left of her. They need to see that peace matters. They need to see that love is supposed to build you, not break you. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling as though searching for words she had rehearsed in her mind for years but never spoken out loud. I used to pray every night that he would change. That one day he'd look at me and say, let me carry you, let me protect you, let me make you feel safe. I begged God for that moment. But it never came. And maybe it never will. Maybe God isn't waiting for him to change. Maybe God is waiting for me to stop begging and finally choose myself. The tears ran freely again, but they no longer weakened her voice. Instead, they strengthened it. I've proven my loyalty. I stayed when everyone said leave. I defended him when people laughed at me. I carried his children, I carried his name, I carried his shame. And it cost me everything. My peace, my joy, my spirit. If Mendeecees Harris wants me, if he wants this marriage, if he wants this family, then he has to fight for it. Because I can't fight anymore. I've bled enough for us both. The silence that followed was louder than any fight they had ever had. Keisha's breath shook as she reached out, gripping her cousin's hand tightly as though anchoring her to the truth she had just spoken. You've always been my example, she said softly through tears. But maybe the example you've been showing me all these years wasn't the right one. Maybe the lesson isn't that you endure no matter what. Maybe the lesson is knowing when enough is enough. For the first time that night, a faint smile touched Yandy Smith's lips. It wasn't a smile of joy, but of recognition. Exactly, Keisha. That's the lesson I needed to learn too. Strength isn't just about surviving. It's about knowing when to stop surviving. Sometimes real strength is choosing to walk away. Her cousin sobbed quietly, squeezing her hand tighter. But Yandy Smith's voice grew calmer, steadier, as if each word lifted another weight from her chest. I've been expected to wait my whole life, wait for him to come home, wait for him to change, wait for him to notice me, wait for him to fight for me. And I did wait. I waited through prison years. I waited through rumors. I waited through nights of loneliness. But all waiting ever gave me was more pain. I can't wait anymore, Keisha. My kids need a mother who isn't drained, who isn't breaking. And my soul needs peace more than my pride needs marriage. Her words cut through the silence like glass. Keisha wiped at her cheeks, whispering, but cousin, what if he changes after you let go? Yandy Smith shook her head slowly, her eyes clear. If he couldn't see me while I was giving him everything, what makes you think he'll see me when I have nothing left? He's had 19 years. If he doesn't fight for me now, then the truth is he never intended to. The room felt colder, the air sharper. The weight of her words made it clear this wasn't a moment of weakness, it was a breaking point, a declaration, a line in the sand. Yandy Smith wasn't asking for sympathy, and she wasn't making empty threats. She was reclaiming herself, piece by piece. After years of being buried under the illusion of love that only demanded sacrifice, she took a long, shaky breath, her voice soft but final. If choosing myself makes me the villain, then I'll wear that crown. I'd rather be hated for protecting my peace than destroyed for clinging to pain. Keisha's tears flowed harder as she whispered, "You're stronger than I even realized. But I'm scared for you too." Her cousin gave her hand one last squeeze, her tired eyes steady. "Don't be scared for me. Be scared for him. Because if Mendeecees Harris doesn't realize what he's about to lose, then the marriage he thought was unbreakable will end without a single argument, just silence. And sometimes silence is the loudest goodbye of all." The clock ticked in the background, the only sound in a house that had just witnessed 19 years of bottled truth finally spoken. And as the night crept closer to morning, one question hung in the air heavier than the silence itself. Would Mendeecees Harris finally rise to fight for the woman who had fought for him endlessly? Or had the fight already ended before he even noticed it had begun?